The foster care system is a good lifeboat when there's an emergency, when a family's in crisis, but it's developed into a long-term, just-in-case option. And people need to realize that foster care brings harm. It's like amputations. Amputating a limb when it's cancerous may in fact be the best thing, but it's never the first option. Foster care ought to be a last-ditch option so that you remove children only if you can't work on the problem with the children home. Unfortunately, I'm seeing third, fourth generation kids from foster care. The system doesn't do a good job of healing. If we can use the system to heal the families so the children can go back home, they won't have perfect parents, but perfect isn't the standard. A parent who loves and cares for the child, that ought to be enough. If we can then help those parents do an even better job, so much the better. But we're not going to find them perfect parents by removing them.
MIT did a study and looked at cases long term. There were cases in the middle, and the term they use there is on the margins, where caseworkers might disagree about whether removal was required or not. They followed these kids for years and found out that when you erred on the side of leaving the children in the home, they actually did better on things like later delinquency, criminal activity, substance abuse, and mental health. So there's support for erring on the side of family.
Well, most statutes don't say you have to be a perfect parent to get your kid back. And so I don't think that the goal here is that this person becomes a perfect parent. I think the goal is that they gain the skills that they need to make sure that their child is safe. And if we look at the concept or think about the concept of the least amount of harm or no net harm to a child, I think many people would say that returning a child home to a biological parent who still has some issues is better than severing the bond forever with that parent and leaving them in a foster care home that may be perceived as slightly better. I think that most children you ask who are old enough to tell you what they think will say that they would rather be with their parents, as flawed as they are, than anywhere else.
Most people don't realize that if you're indigent in Mississippi, you get no court-appointed attorney in abuse and neglect proceedings. That is, the judge decides without an advocate, without anyone to help you with policy, with practice or procedure. It is totally detrimental to a fair decision not to have representation.
Mississippi is the only state in the union that does not have a statute allowing for the appointment of counsel in civil cases for parents involved in abuse and neglect cases. That in itself is alarming, and I like to use the analogy whenever I talk to other advocates in the area. If you kill someone, you have the right to an attorney if you're indigent. However, if your children are taken from you, you don't have a right. And that's a constitutional rights issue. It's a due process issue. It's something that we certainly have to address here in Mississippi.
It's been a tremendous benefit to our families, tremendous benefit to our children. It's resulted in quicker reunifications, less recommendations of termination of parental rights, quicker permanency.
As a result of that study, we were able to obtain funding from the legislature for a pilot program in 2 different juvenile courts, where we added attorneys so they had lower caseloads, we improved their rate of pay, and we required them to follow practice standards in emphasizing communication with their parent clients and also emphasizing that they work with their clients so that the parents could obtain services in a timely manner. Now we have 140 attorneys and 25 social workers working on the program, and the results have been fantastic. The evaluations have shown that more families are able to reunify. It's about an increase of 36%. We have seen our state foster care caseloads drop significantly. And so at this point, we have a program that costs $12.3 million a year and is saving the state this year at least $20 million.
There is a community of advocates that are trying to work together to improve outcomes for kids by representing their parents, advocating for visitation, advocating for best practices, advocating that kids and parents see each other, that children are placed with kin so that parents have more accessibility to those kids. We're changing child welfare. Courts are paying attention, the judges as well as the administrative offices of courts, and child welfare agency leaders are paying attention and realizing that their goals, their outcomes for families are the same as ours, and that we can only help the agency get kids home sooner and safer.
And so I'm thinking about a court hearing that I had where a child that we were working with hadn't seen his mom in months. And I still remember this image of this child walking into the courthouse and seeing his mom for the first time in those months. It was a little 3-year-old child who just sprinted and just jumped into his mom's arms, and during the entire duration of the court proceeding sat there clinging to his mother, not wanting to let go. In my mind, that is what these cases are about. But if we don't get the parent's perspective and don't really understand what the parent is going through, you miss that. You miss the strengths, because what's documented in these petitions, what's documented at these court hearings, all focus on weaknesses. And what you miss is that richness of that relationship between the parent and the child, but also the entire family constellation, the relatives, the aunts, the uncles, the fact that this child is part of a family that, as any family may have, has weaknesses. But they have other strengths that we need to find, and one way to do that is by giving parents lawyers.